Hey everybody, Kevin Anthony here, and I am once again joined by the beautiful Steph Ganowski. And in this video, we are going to be talking about how men can be more approachable to women. Now, this comes from a coaching client of mine who asked this very question, and it caught me a little bit off guard at first because I was thinking in my mind, while there's nothing wrong with a woman approaching a man, generally it is the man who would approach the woman. And so I really wanted to work with him first on how he could become more confident and approach the types of women that he really wanted to approach. And at the same time, there are some things that he could potentially do to open the door a little bit and make women feel more comfortable in approaching him. But Steph, you have a really good point about this when it comes to men being approachable to women versus men going out and approaching women. Why don't you share that with our audience?
Yeah, sure. So, what that makes me think is that this man who's waiting for women to approach him, or any man who feels like he wants to wait, is most likely going to attract a dominant woman. Meaning that if you go into a relationship with that woman, you can't be upset if she tries to take charge in the relationship because she initially took charge on initiating, right, in conversation with you and approaching you. So if that's in her nature, it's just in her nature. She's not going to change. She is that type of woman. So if you don't want to attract that type of woman, then most likely you want to get comfortable approaching women yourself and you taking the lead. If you want if you want to be the dominant in that relationship. So yeah, that's definitely important. And I had a client who was dealing with this as well, where he didn't want to be the one to approach, but he also didn't want to be dominated by the woman in his relationships. And he would get frustrated whenever he was. And I'm like, well, look at how it started. Like you can't blame her. That's in her nature. That's the type of woman she is. And you either have to get comfortable taking the lead or just accept that this is who you're going to continue attracting until you change.
Absolutely. And that's exactly the approach that I have been taking with my clients as well. And I love how you bring that up is that, yeah, typically a woman who is going to take charge and approach is going to be a more dominant woman. So you better be prepared for that.
Yeah.
Having said,
Typically, right? Like not all the time. Like there's definitely women who will be more submissive. I know when I was single, I made 2 attempts to approach the guy, and one was like on the beach, and I left him a note and then walked away, and I was like, my God. But that was like my way. It was definitely not dominant because I don't want to be the dominant, person in the relationship dynamic. So it was kind of like a cute little note and then me running away, which is still like a submissive way to approach a guy, if you think about it. So,
yeah,
but yeah,
and
it's just for the most part.
well, that's a great point is that, how the woman approaches you is going to give you a clue as to whether or not she's going to be dominant, right? So whether if she just comes up to you and says, "Hey, what are you doing tonight?" or, "Hey, how about we get
Mhm.
a drink?" or, whatever, versus maybe coming over and flirting with you a little bit, maybe giving an open body position, giving you those more subtle feminine signs that she's open to it, or
Mhm.
even a little note, something cute like that. That is going to show you that while she's interested, but she's still waiting for you to really make the first move.
Yeah. And if you
So,
don't, most likely that type of woman will walk away and be like, all right, forget this.
yeah, you know what? This is the perfect time to tell a funny story that happened to me very recently. So I was out at an event recently, and I'm a musician, and I play a couple of different instruments. One of which is the African djembe, and I used to play with a group of djembe players, and we would do events out here and there. I hadn't been out doing events for a long time, and there was recently a benefit for the victims of the Maui fire. So we did a show for that, and after the show, I pack up all my stuff and it's late and I just want to go home. And I'm walking out of the venue, and this woman approaches me with her cell phone in her hand, and she says, "Hey, can I follow you on Instagram?" And other than my business Instagram, I don't have a personal Instagram. And so I just looked at her and I said, "I don't actually have an Instagram." And she just looked at me and didn't know what to say and then walked away. And I was like so not in the space. And, and
Yeah.
I and I walk away from that. I get like 20 feet down and I realize I go, Oh, yeah, I realized what she was doing, and I just totally blew that. But that's a
That
great
was her way of
example.
being like, can I have your number?
Exactly, exactly. And it was like totally right over my wife used to laugh at me for that all the time. Because, we would go out places. Sometimes women would hit on me right in front of her, and I wouldn't even get it. And she'd
Oh
just
my
be like,
God.
"You realize she was hitting on you, right?" And I'd be like, "What?"
What?
I'm not really
That
used
is
to women
great.
trying to pick me up. So when it does happen, I completely miss it. Okay.
Yeah,
Having
that's funny.
having said all of that, there are a couple of things that I think men could do if they really do want to leave themselves open. Maybe they like a dominant woman. I don't know. One of
Yeah,
them,
yeah. And if you do, that's fine, by the
yeah.
way.
So one of them is to just be social. So, the person that I was speaking to who asked me this question, although I've never been out to a public setting with him, I get the feeling just having known him that the way he would be very sort of like closed off, kind of like the wallflower type individual, right? Standing over against the wall in the middle of the crowded dance club, not really interacting with people. And so my suggestion was, well, just be more social. Interact with the people around you. Show that you're willing to interact with people. Make that space open so that somebody could talk to you rather than being like, all closed off and in the corner of the room.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that it's interesting because that's like attractive in general. People who are just very open in that way, but it's also not in the nature of a lot of guys to do that, to just because they're just like natural introverts or they just don't have like it's just not in them to be that like open, present, like wanting to, you know, invite conversations in. So I would say like if anything, if it's too intimidating for you to like open yourself up to like being actively talking to people, maybe just like focus on the body language of opening yourself up. And like you said, instead of being like a physical wallflower, like walk away. Maybe it's like your goal next time you go to an event is to not stand by the wall, like stand in the middle of the room and just like see how that changes the dynamic of like how open your body language changes. And maybe you do feel more comfortable talking with people when you're actually in, in the center of it all. So just like play around with what works best for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Next one would be to not come across as being needy or desperate for sex. We talked about that in a previous video about how when a guy's exuding that sort of needy energy, I need to get laid, I need to hook up with a woman tonight, that just repels women. So they're obviously not going to approach you when they feel that energy coming from you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely not.
Enough said. Like
I
no
think
more explanation needed on that one.
I think something that could help guys who feel like maybe they notice they're needy and they're like, oh man, I hate coming across this way, but I just haven't gotten laid in so long. Maybe it would help you to masturbate before going out that night. Like to fulfill your own sexual needs and fill that cup a little bit, so to speak. Like just to satisfy yourself in that way so that you can focus on engaging, when you're out there and not be so tied up in she can have sex with me.
As they said in the movie, there's something about Mary. Don't go out with a loaded gun.
Exactly.
In this particular case.
Yes.
Okay, the last one on my list is to pay attention to the signs that she's interested, right? So this is something that we were talking about just a little while ago, which is that, like you did with the note, there may be subtle signs that
Mhm.
maybe might not be so overt. So if you want to make yourself more approachable, pay attention to those signs because they may actually be approaching you and you just don't even realize it. Like me just, saying, I don't have an Instagram, where I could have simply said, I don't have an Instagram, but here's where else you could find me.
Yeah.
It could be that simple.
Yeah. Yeah, it really could. And I think I'm working with a client now who's like coming from this place of not dating in a while and not having sex in a long time. And he's like, how do I know like when I'm ready for this and that? And when can this happen? And I was like, well, let's map out some signs or some cues, and like getting clear on, okay, if she touches you and if she's touched you a couple times during the night, like she initiated the touch, that's a really good sign. Let's take that as a good sign of connection and interest, right? Like if she does this, pay attention to that. If she does this. So I gave him like 3 things to pay attention to. And he's so much more likely to see those things because now he's kind of looking for them in a sense versus looking for the ways where she might not be interested, which is what a lot of nervous guys tend to do. If they're feeling desperate or they're feeling really nervous, they will naturally look for evidence to prove that she's not interested in them and prove why they should be nervous, right? So being sure that you have an intention of what you're wanting to look for is important because that will help your confidence and help rid you of anxiety and nervousness.
Yeah, that's really interesting, right? Because like the pickup artist guys are the complete opposite. They're looking, if you give one piece of information that shows you're interested, they're like, I got an in. It's like the movie Dumb and Dumber, right? When she's like, I wouldn't have sex with you, or, you know, the chances are like a zillion to 1. And he's like, then there's a chance.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Flip that around for sure. All right. Well, there you go. That's how you can work on taking more charge and actually being the one to approach, and also creating a space to be more approachable if that is what you want as well.